Here's another romantic comedies wrap up. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I'm going to be doing another romantic comedies wrap-ups. Are we surprised here that I read a lot of romantic comedies? No, we shouldn't, because I love my romantic comedies, and especially during this season and during this time is where publishers like to publish most of their romantic comedies out there, and I love it. It's so fun, and I've read some really great books that I want to share with you and actually talk about, and they are also 2020 releases that are coming out in the next couple months. These books should be on your radar, and some of them books can be taken off your TBR as well. So let's get started. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Love Scam by Mary Janice Davison, and this book I've talked a lot about to my friends Lacey and Jessica because I've tried to convince them that this is actually a good book. So the Goodreads rating for this book right now is currently sitting at a 2.8, which is extremely low in terms of my standards. Anything below a 3 is something that you should be wary of. I've hardly ever seen a book sitting at this low of a rating before, and it's just starting off for ARCs. So this book actually comes out in August 2020. So far there's like 100 reviews from ARC readers, and all of them consecutively said that they're either DNFing the book or they actually didn't like it. But majority of the reviews that I do see are DNFs, and I do understand a reason why. So this book follows a male character who wakes up and he has this severe headache, blinded by the light. He doesn't really know where he is, but he soon realizes that he's actually in Venice, Italy, and he's wondering how he got there because he's actually originally from California and he doesn't know what's happening to him. He feels like he wants to vomit, and he runs out of his hotel room out straight into the canal, and he basically throws himself into the water and he almost drowns, but he gets saved and he comes back up and he realizes that he's in Venice for good. It's not a dream. He lost his wallet, so he calls the bank up to hopefully get some money so that he can leave Venice, Italy, only to realize that he has no more money left in his bank account. He's actually a millionaire, so like all his millions are gone, and he's starting to freak out. There's this girl that rescues him by the water and basically drops off a kid into his lap and says, "This kid is actually yours. You might be the father of this kid, so like make sure to take care of her." And so he's just like left confused because now he has no money and he's in Venice with a kid that he needs to take care of. So with the help of the girl that dropped off the kid, they start to piece together what actually happened to him and how he ended up in Venice. So there's this mystery behind it of like, where did his money go? How did he show up there? Is this kid really his kid? All in the while he's trying to earn his living by helping her do charity work so that he can live under the same roof as her. And I can tell you the reason why a lot of people DNF this book, because I don't know if it was just like poor editing in the first half of this book or what, or maybe that's like how the author writes, because that's like really annoying if that's how she writes. But the first half of the book, like the first 50 pages of this book, is filled with horrible writing. The sentences would like break off, and then it'll be like in brackets of like the thoughts that the characters would have, so it would disrupt your flow of like how you read the book. The characters were saying like a lot of zany things that like normal people wouldn't say nowadays, and it just felt very choppy, and it's very hard for you to get into the story. But after those 50 pages, I was completely intrigued. I really wanted to figure out like, how did he get to Venice? Where did his money go? And he's slowly starting to get back his memories, and he's slowly starting to build together his past, and it slowly starts to get revealed. And I just kept like reading faster and faster because I really wanted to know, why is he there? And also the story is set in Venice, Italy, and obviously right now it's a terrible time to vacation, and it's a terrible place to even like think that you should have fun, because a lot of people are suffering in there. But in other circumstances, if that was not happening around the world, this book definitely transports you to Italy, into Venice, into an area where it's a lot happier, it's a lot sunnier, and it's a lot lovelier. This book takes place in the summer, so it made me feel like I went on a vacation to a Venice, Italy, on a world where the coronavirus wasn't taking over. And that takes a lot for a book to do and try to convince me that I'm not sitting in my bedroom reading this book, as opposed to actually me sitting in Venice reading this book. So I really enjoyed it, and I loved the ending. It was a beautiful twist that I never saw coming, and it was just like, it blew my mind of like how it unraveled and how it unfolded, and I just love it so much. And I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, and I really hope that people do check this book out, even despite the Goodreads rating. I mean, I told a lot of people on my Instagram stories that this book is really good, and a lot of people were like, I have the arc, but I was like really scared about it, but you've convinced me to start it. So hopefully you're convinced too, and that you can try out this book if you wish. So thank you to St. Martin's Press for sending me this book. So the next book that I read is another book that was sent to me from St. Martin's Press, and it's called The Wrong Mr Darcy by Evelyn Lozada with Helen Lorenz. And this book is co-written, so it's from two authors. Evelyn is actually like a reality TV star from this basketball show that I obviously don't watch because I'm not a fan of basketball, so why would I watch a reality TV show filled with basketball wives? But regardless, I don't judge the authors and their backgrounds. I read the book for what it is. And this is a rom-com that's really lightly based on Pride and Prejudice. I say very lightly because this book doesn't really have like follows the same structure as Pride and Prejudice and follows the same plot line. It just follows like somewhat of the same characters. We have a character that is like kind of a Wickham, which is kind of like the enemy, and then we have Darcy, who is from a wealthy background. He's the star NBA player. He's been sitting on the bench for the past season, but finally he's allowed to be on the court and to actually play ball, and he's actually has a time for him to shine and to really show the whole state what he's got. And then we have a girl who's from a poor background, who is coming from a darker background as well. Her father is actually in prison because this sports lottery betting scheme, and she is a journalist who wants to become a very famous sports journalist. She wins a contest to go visit the game and to actually interview one of the star players, and that's how they meet and that's how their story begins. I thought the writing was very captivating because it pulls you into the story and you actually don't really realize that a lot of the things that are happening in the story isn't moving the plot along and it's just the characters living. But towards the end, there's a lot of things that do happen, and it's not like it's dramatic because I think it does happen, and it's just things that just unraveled. And once again, it's like a story that unravels at the end. You know, in the first like the first 80% of the book, you're unsure of like what's gonna be the rating because you're just like, okay, I get it. You guys are just thriving and living, so okay. But then towards the end, everything happens and you're just like, wow, I did not see that coming. A lot of reviewers didn't like the ending because they thought that the pacing was too fast. But for me, I thought the pacing was fine and I thought it was like a good pacing to make it believable. Then I also really liked the two characters' like main attraction for each other. I've never read a book that had this much chemistry. Like I felt it. Like I felt it because our main male character would just stare at her, but like the way that it was described that he was staring at her felt like she was the only person in the world, and I really like that. And I just never read a book with this much chemistry, and I highly recommend this one as well. I gave this one 4.5 stars out of 5. I took off 0.5 because it dragged it a little bit, but that's fine. And also this book does also have a 2.8 star rating on Goodreads. A lot of the ARC reviewers don't like this one as well, but once again, I've tried to convince my followers on Instagram to go read this book, and they are picking this up soon, so yay. So the next book that I picked up is Unmarriageable by Sonia Kamal, and this I actually listened to on audiobook, and it was actually narrated by the author, which I found very exciting. And honestly, I'm not going to be disappointed by listening to the audiobook because actually when I took a look at like the font size in this book and how the story was written, I knew that I would take me a very, very long time to read this novel. So I'm glad that my library had a copy of this audiobook. So this one is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. Once again, there's a theme in this video apparently, but it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it's set in Pakistan, and it's between like this family that wants to marry off the daughters, and then we have the elite group, the Darcys, who are very rich and who are coming from different parts of America and who are well established. And we have our strong heroine who doesn't want to get married, who doesn't want to follow traditions, and who wants to just like take care of herself and be her own woman and actually strive for a career and a profession. And he is like this rich, wealthy man who wants to listen to her opinions because she's a breath of fresh air to him. And it's this like relationship and this drama that unfolds between characters and cultures. Aside from the story being very similar to Pride and Prejudice, I really like the culture that was depicted in the story. There's a lot of things that I didn't know about in the Pakistan culture, and I liked hearing about about those parts, and I also like throwing myself into that world that I'm not familiar with, and I felt like I was being more educated and worldly from just reading this book. So I definitely recommend this book if you like your romances with a little bit of culture. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars because it didn't really impress me, but it was still a good read. So the next romance that I read or I listened to on audiobook is We Met in December by Rosie Curtis, and this book I've been putting off for a very, very long time because every time Christmas comes along, I don't want to read Christmas novels, but for some reason in November, a month ahead of Christmas, I want to read all the Christmas novels, and then I just miss my opportunity and my window of time to actually read the Christmas books on my list. So I finally read this one, and this one's actually not really a Christmas novel. So if you guys want to still read this novel right now, you guys can do it right now because this book actually takes place from a span of one whole year, and it follows two best friends basically, or two people who met in December who have like a very strong connection with each other, but they soon realize that they have a lot of things standing in their ways that stop them from having a proper relationship or stop them from having an actual like proper fling. And it's their group of friends and how their interactions with different peoples in their lives that actually stop them. And it's a very interesting read. I really liked it because it took place in London, and it once again transported me out from, you know, the place that I live in Canada. It gave me like a sense of warmth. Like it was a very feel good, lovey romance that I really enjoyed about life and about people making mistakes and learning from mistakes. And then also I really liked how the girl is actually working for a book publishing company, and she talks about books, and she says that, you know, she always thought she had a lot of books to read, but then ever since working for a publishing company, she has more than ever books to read because all the books are free for her. And I just really like that aspect of the book, and I really like them growing individually before they got together, and I really liked it, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read is actually an ARC that I received on NetGalley from the author, and this book is called Don't Go Stealing My Heart by Kelly Siskind. I actually don't know how to say her last name. Once again, are we surprised? This book was actually a book that I requested after seeing a Chelsea Dolan Reads video where she talked about all of her books that she wants to read, or it could have been like a random book that I found and I thought Chelsea recommended it. But anyways, this book I also read after Lacey read it because Lacey got an ARC too and she really enjoyed it. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll just pick up the eGalley that I have on my Kindle already. And this book is about a girl who's a modern Robin Hood who steals a lot of like jewels and paintings and like things of value, and she gives it to her dealer who in turn sells it and gives the cash to charities in different countries. And she thinks that she is helping out all these charities this entire time that she's been stealing, and she's trying to steal a very famous painting, and she meets our main character in a small town, and she thinks the worst of him, and she has a lot of prejudice against him, thinking that because he's wealthy and he owns the factory that basically supports the economy for this whole small town, that he's very stuck up and nobody likes him. But soon, the more she tries to get into his life and gets to know him, she realizes that he's definitely not that type of person that she thinks he is, and that he is actually a very nice person that actually takes care of everyone in the town, who's trying his best to keep the company afloat so that he doesn't lay off a lot of the workers in the town, and who's also trying to take care of his family. I thought the story was lovely and sweet, and honestly, if I have to say, it was kind of very slow in the beginning and I was very like unsure of where the story would take me, but towards the end there's a lot of action, and it's actually kind of written like a romantic suspense towards the end that kept you intrigued. I love the characters. I thought the two characters were so good. Like they were actually like good people to the core, and you couldn't even hate them because they were just so forgiving and so loving. And me and Lacey were talking about how these characters are just too good for this world and too pure. So I love this novel. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I definitely recommend you to check out Kelly's books. So the next book that I read is finally I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, and this book, oh god, I have a long history with this book. I've tried to read it 2 times now, but I couldn't do it because I just felt like there was just so much hate poured into the chapters. Like Sally does a great job at making you feel like that they actually hate each other, and It's a lot to take in when there's just so much hate. Like, there's a fine balance between enemies to lovers. Like, I like my enemies to lovers to be, like, teasing and, like, light, but, like, never, like, cutting for the throat and to, like, make you bleed out and die. Like, that's not my type of enemies to lovers romance I like, but for some reason, I just felt like that the Haiti game was exactly that. Like, they really cut you at the knees to cut you down, and I couldn't get through the first 100 pages, but I finally bit the bullet and I listened to the audiobook of this book. And you know what? Thank God I did that, because I would have never picked it up ever again, even though I own 2 copies of this. I know a lot of my viewers, I know a lot of them people really love the hating game, but I just couldn't do it. But after you get through like half of the audiobook, so I guess like half of the book, you start to realize that they actually don't hate each other that much, and they're actually very cute and very sweet with each other. And it was lovely. Like, I liked it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The only reason why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars was because the first part was way too much hate, so I took off a star. And then I also took off another star because towards the ending, I realized that it was very generic, and it was like a plot that was very predictable. There was nothing really special about it. Like, I just didn't really like the ending that much. Like, it wasn't very smart, so that's why I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was a very average book at best. I'm so sorry to the people who like the hating game. Don't kill me. So the next book that I read is The Happily Ever After Playlist by Abby Jimenez. So I've talked about how I probably won't read this book and I don't know how to feel about this book, but what happened was that me and my friends Lacey and Jessica decided to do a group read, and we read this novel and they really liked it, but I was like, okay, I'm still kind of like traumatized from the first book, The Friend Zone by Abby, so I'm not really too sure about this one. So I entered very like I was very scared. I was like Bambi walking into a novel because I was that scared that Abby would traumatize me again with like her actions and her words and her false pretenses. And when I was reading this book, I was like, wow, they're like really great friends, and they really like each other very quickly. It's very insta-lovey. So this book is about a girl that recently lost her fiance in a fatal car accident, and it's about her dealing with her grief and dealing with her depression and dealing with her traumatization from the accident and moving on with her life. She's driving down the road and she sees a dog that runs out into the road, and she picks up the dog and she suddenly falls in love with the dog. So she decides to take care of the dog and take it for as her own. But then the owner calls back and the owner's like, no, that's my best friend. I really need my dog right now. But they start to have this like texting and calling relationship because they're just so smitten with each other from their voices, and they love each other because like they both love this dog so much. So this dog really connects them together. And obviously it's very insta-lovey, as you can tell from my general synopsis of this novel. But he's actually a rock star. He's this like famous country singer, or like some other singer, and he's touring around the world. He can't live without her, so he decides to ask her out on tour. So they go touring around with each other, and it's that experience. I don't know if I said this already, but basically I don't like rock star or Hollywood romances because I feel like it's very fake, and I feel like it's very not genuine, and I don't like it like that. And I feel like once like the aspect of tabloids coming in to destroy the relationship, and like other factors like the industry coming in to destroy the relationship, that's where I pull out and I go like, this is unrelatable, because I know my favorite like rock star is not going to come and date me, so like I can't relate to these characters. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was a good book. It wasn't as bad as The Friend Zone. It didn't leave me traumatized, but also at the same time, it was so insta-lovey that I kind of like didn't really believe it. The only thing I did really like is that it dealt with a lot of grief, and it dealt a lot with how people handle grief differently, and I really like that aspect. So the next book that I read is The Boyfriend Project by Farah Roshan. I don't know if I said her name wrong. So basically this book starts off very similarly to Lauren Lane series from Simon Schuster called the Central Park Pack series. It's basically about 3 girls who meet each other for the first time after realizing that the person that they've been dating has been cheating on them with the other girls, and they think that he's like a complete jerk. They throw a fuss at the restaurant and they just like storm out, and then they believe that they can be best friends for life because they have this one common thing. And that's exactly what happens with the Central Park Pack series from Lauren Lane, which I thought at the time was so creative, that because I've never seen that plot line before. But now that I see it in The Boyfriend Project, it makes me think that somebody out there has, you know, copied the idea and didn't think that it was as original, even though it doesn't play like a very big factor and role into the story. I thought that that was really weird how it could be so similar. So this book follows exactly that, and the girl, our main female character, works for a tech company, and she decides to spend 8 months or for the next year and not having a boyfriend and just to focus on developing her app. It doesn't help when a new guy shows up at work and he is very attractive and he makes really good small talk and he's really cute to her and they share a friendship, and so it definitely doesn't help and it definitely keeps her distracted. They start off this relationship and friendship, and it sounds like a good story so far, but my main problems with this book is definitely the writing. I thought the writing was atrocious. Like, it was so bad. Like, the way that the author described body parts, described like emotions, described like simple actions were very confusing. Like normal people don't talk like that anymore. The author put a lot of outdated slang into the story that made me go like, oh my god, where am I? Am I in 2017 or 2020? And like, you're a grown woman. Why are you using slang to depict a body part? Can't you just say what it is? Like, like, let's be more mature about this. And I just thought that the story was lacking. I didn't think it was interesting at all. I thought it was like really boring a lot of the times, and I ended up giving this one a 1 out of 5 stars. So the last arc that I read is The Trouble with Hating You by Sajini Patel, and this one's from Forever Romance. This one's going to be released in the summer, and I thought, so this was my first Forever Romance e-galley that I read. So I read the Happily Ever After playlist last, and then I read The Boyfriend Project, and now the first book is this one. So this one I was very unsure of when I was walking into the romance, because I was just like, I don't know. I'd never seen this author before, and I was just scared. So when I first walked in, I was very judgmental of the characters, and I thought that the girl was very obnoxious because everything she did, she would describe her like shoes being Christian Louboutin, she'll describe her shirt to be like Gucci, and she'll describe like Prada bags, and it was very overdone. Like, we get it, she's rich, she does well for herself, she spends money on herself, she wants to look like the part, and she wants to look really nice. But then afterwards I got more into the story and I started realizing what is actually happening in the story. So a big trigger warning for people who don't like stories with like sexual assault backstories and also stories of basically pedophilia, because our main female character has been traumatized when she was very young. Like, when she was 14 years old, she was sexually assaulted by an older man in her group of people in her religion. So he's like basically like, I think like he's like the priest, or like he's the person in the religious group that everybody turns to because he's the most noble man and he's the most religious man, but he actually sexually assaulted her. And the whole backstory is that nobody believes her and everybody thinks that she's just making it up and that she seduced him, if that actually ever happened. And she's been publicly labeled in her community and in her neighborhood that she is a slut and that she is a woman that always has sex with everyone, because in her religion she's not supposed to have sex before marriage. So because she decides to take on sexual partners for the rest of her high school years and also throughout the rest of her adulthood years, people look at her differently and people think that she is damaged goods. So there's a lot of like that impact and that aspect in the story that shocked me and that I really appreciated and really liked, because it's stuff that happens, but it doesn't happen all the time in cultures that we experience. And it's good to read about other people's cultures and good to realize that this is the stuff that may happen to them if this were the case. And I really like the romance between the story too, because she's getting set up to meet a man, but she doesn't want a man. Like, she doesn't want a husband in her religion and her race, because she knows that those people would want her to stay at home and to take care of the family and to not have a career. And she's focused on her career and she wants to be a strong, independent woman herself. So she runs away from their arranged date and she realizes that, and they crash into each other on the lawn, and it's a very cute meet cute. And she realizes that he's very handsome, but she also has prejudice against him because, like, what's wrong with him? Like, why does he want to date me? And then for him, he's like, why doesn't she want to date me and why is she running away? This is so rude and disrespectful to my whole family because we arranged this whole thing and start off on very bad terms. And there's a lot of like enemies to lovers romance aspect in it as well. And the chemistry between the characters I really enjoyed. And I thought our main male character did a really good job at being like a good, strong hero that lets the girl take the lead on a lot of projects and take the lead in a lot of work and be her own self. and I really liked it. Like, I love the story. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I do recommend you to check this one out when it does come out. So the last book that I'm going to talk about is Only When It's Us by Chloe Leese. And now this book was recommended to me by Chelsea, I think, because she had her video up and I requested on NetGalley, and the author was kind enough to give it to me. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, but it's a very low 3 out of 5 stars because the writing just didn't do it for me and I just didn't really like it. But then afterwards, there was like some things that did happen towards the end that make me like it. So this book is about a female soccer player that is going to make it big and going to join internationals after universities. So she's in business class and she gets paired up with this gruff looking lumberjack type of male character that seems like he's very mean and he's non-responsive. So she automatically hates him because she thinks that he hates her, which is very childish, which is something that like you shouldn't be doing anyways. You should get to know a person before you judge them, but she's very judgmental throughout the whole book and it just pissed me off a lot because like certain things that he would do, she would take personal offense to it, which makes no sense. I don't get it. I thought the writing was a little bit weird. Like I thought it was too sassy for my liking and it wasn't like as like tight as I wanted it to be. And this book featured a character with a hearing disability. So he's actually deaf and he actually can't hear anymore. And that's the reason why he's like ignoring her because he literally can't hear her, but she's taking personal offense to it. And that made me like go like, okay, like, why are you so angry? Like, I know you don't know, but like the events leading afterwards, after you found out he's deaf, she's still taking personal offense to it. So I just didn't get it. I took off a star because of that. And then I also took off a star because something happened towards the end that I felt like it was too good to be true. And it just felt like too convenient for them so that they could have a normal relationship. And then, so the really reason why I kept it at 3 out of 5 stars was because I liked them getting to know each other and I liked the relationship that they had that was very intimate and very sweet. So that is it for all the romantic comedies that I read in the past 2 weeks. Hopefully you guys have some recommendations. Hopefully you added some books onto your TBR list. Hopefully you might have taken off some books off your TBR list. Who knows? But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.